Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw and I'm overjoyed to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson and our very special guest, Steven Pressley. Steven, how's it going?
Very well, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us, because to be honest, if I had to do another night of just me and Keith.
Aye. See, this is why I say don't oversell things. You're not overjoyed that I'm here because I'm always here. You're overjoyed that we've been joined by a celebrity guest. I'm not sure if it's Kenny Rogers or Steven Pressley, but
Well, between the three of us, Keith, between the three of us, I should say, I've had the abacus out. Between the three of us, we've got 32 Scotland caps,
aye,
2 Premier League winners' medals, and 3 Scottish Cup winners' medals.
not bad for 3 people.
It's pretty good, isn't it? Pretty good.
How are you, big man? You all right?
I'm very well, thanks, Keith. Very well.
Look good. Well, thanks for joining us.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. Before we get into talking a wee bit about your career, and we've had, I should say, I put out for questions on Record Sports social media channels earlier on today. We had 5 or 6 really good questions, so thanks for sending them in. Before we do that, Keith, I understand you were at the Scotland press conference today with John Carver.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Yeah, well, they're counting the bodies in, counting the bodies back out again just now, aren't they? There's new injuries all the time. This is quite unlike how it's been over the period for Steve Clarke. I think he's kind of prided himself on the fact that, you know, players want to turn up for international duty. He's never had a problem with call-offs. I think these are genuine. I think it's just a really bad run of luck. So obviously chopping and changing. The crux of the matter is, when we come down to these games against Croatia and Portugal, we should have a decent core of the 11, a strong core. We're bringing in players now that are kind of filling up numbers around the periphery. Yes, we're going to miss guys like Kieran Tierney and John McGinn, of course we are, but there's still enough stalwarts there for them to send out a decent side. And I think what's quite interesting is the problems with numbers and the fact that he's having to draft in people with not a lot of experience. You might see the acceleration of Ben Doak's Scotland career. You could just see, you know, going into these games now, whereas if he had a full squad to choose from, maybe Ben Doak would have to be patient and sit and wait his chance. Now there's less and less reason to ask him to do that. So that's interesting and I think exciting, because Elvis will know better than me. You've probably seen a lot more than Ben Doak than I have. But what I have seen, I love Elvis. I think this boy has got a massive, massive future in front of him.
Well, I haven't seen a great deal, I'll be honest with you, of Ben, but he's only 18 years of age. No, I'm sorry, I haven't seen a great deal of him, but he's obviously got a growing reputation, and he's a wide attacking player that's very exciting, something that we're sadly missing at this moment in time in the Scottish game. The ability to eliminate opponents, which I think is essential in the modern game, and sadly we don't appear to be producing these types of players. So, you know, it's good to have one on board.
Well, I think the thing that I'm heartened by is that Jurgen Klopp seemed to rate him so highly. He actually didn't want him to send him out on loan. He actually felt he had inside his own building a potential replacement for Mo Salah when Mo Salah decides to call it a day at Anfield. And if a guy like Jurgen Klopp is thinking that, then I'm happy to go along with it. But I know, Elvis, I'm guessing that you'll think as well, need to be careful, don't put too much pressure on the boy. He is just a kid. He's got to learn to walk before he can run. I get all that, but I think the Tartan Army are looking at the potential that he brings, and they are getting a wee bit excited about it, and I'm all for that. Why not get excited?
No, I think so. And the thing for me, Keith, is that especially with young players, and I love that he has an appetite to go out and play football, because you know, I'm involved in the development aspect myself a great deal, and the biggest developer of young players is games. There's not a doubt about that. So him playing games is essential in his development. But also, part of kids' development is exposure to situations, exposure to pressures, failing, picking yourself up and going again. That's all part of the journey. of a young player. So, you know, having to deal with the pressures and the expectations is something that Ben will have to obviously grow into, but it's part of being a player, and it's part of the journey. So, you know, these things are no concern to me, and I think they're really important to expose young players to these pressures. The earlier, the better.
I was going to say, is that your view? Because it's my view. Don't mollycoddle these kids. If you think you've got half a chance, get them out there, get them into the real world, and that's where they'll do all their learning. You know, they won't. There's only so much they can learn in the academy.
Of course, you know, and I think that's essential in a young player's development. Exposing them to the difficult aspects of the game, exposing them to the pressures, dealing with the pressures, and then growing to accept the pressures and normalising those pressures. And I think that's essential in a kid's development. And the longer we wait, the more difficult it becomes. So, you know, growing up in my era, you know, playing at 18, 19 was not uncommon. It's more uncommon now. You know, the average age, I think, of a debut in the English Premier League is around 23 years of age. So, you know, that, you know, before you do that, I think you need to go out and be exposed to real football. And that real football for a lot of the British players is in the lower leagues. But I think it's very healthy.
Yeah, it's not a bad standard, is it? After all, the English Championships.
It's a great. Listen, the English Championship's a fantastic standard, and it's got a history of, you know, really developing players.
I mentioned at the top of the show, guys, that I'd put out for questions for you, Stephen, and I'll maybe, as we go on, I'll just drip feed these in, but there's one that seems quite relevant now, Keith, as we're talking about Scotland. It's from David Baird. It says, does Stephen miss appearing for Scotland? What did he make of the Euros campaign, and would he have liked playing in the Nations League?
Well, 3 questions.
Put you in the spot.
So, do I miss playing for Scotland? Yeah, listen, there's great pressures and expectations playing for Scotland. Also for players, you come out of your comfort zone of playing at your club. You're then in a different environment, and you have to find your way in that environment. I think that sometimes can take time for certain players. I think we've witnessed that on numerous occasions where really top players find it difficult to adapt to international football, and it's not always the level of the game, it's just the environment that they're in. They don't feel exactly comfortable within that environment, so it takes time. During my time as a international player, I experienced some really difficult periods and some really enjoyable periods. You know, I obviously was involved during the Bertie Vogt's reign, and the interesting thing is, under Bertie, our actual form in the actual playoff campaign was good. We finished second to Germany and just missed out. The big issue was around friendlies, when Keith's referring at present to it being unusual for players not to turn up in the current camps. Well, it was common during my time as an international player during some of Bertie's friendlies. I think we were exposed to too many friendlies, and there was a big call-off during that period, and unfortunately that affected performance, affected form, affected confidence. So during that period it was a different.
That's why you get 32 caps.
No, I understand that, Keith, but also on the back of that, Walter came in, and we had some really positive performances. Under Bertie, we also had some really positive performances, but the feeling around the camp, the feeling from you guys in the media was far more positive under Walter's reign, and I really enjoyed that period. So it was indifferent, but you know, as a young player growing up, to go on and be capped 32 times for your country, I'm greatly honoured. You know, to get 1 cap would have been an incredible achievement, but to get 32, I am seriously privileged. So that was great. I thoroughly enjoyed the experiences of that.
What was
Would I have loved to be that? Sorry, Keith, on you go.
What was the worst of the wee Bertie times? Because you know, you see, I mean, I know what you've done there, quite cleverly pointing the finger at the bad media guys. We pick up the vibes.
No,
I know. we pick up the vibes. We're around the squad. We see you guys when you're travelling from, from one airport to the next, and you can. There's no mistake in it. You can be around a happy squad and you can feel that energy, and you can be around a squad which is less than happy, far from happy, in fact. And that's what we were picking up around the Bertie Vogts time. I mean, listen, I was never doubting your intention to be there, and your professional attitude to pulling on a Scotland jersey, but I wasn't sure about everybody in that squad at that time. So I'm just wondering, was there one example that sticks in your mind of when you just thought, this is just never going to work?
No, not really. But I think probably my sorest memory in a Scotland jersey was the second leg of the playoffs against the Dutch. Which turned out to be a really difficult night for us all, especially after the incredible result at home, beating Holland 1-0 at Hampden. And if you look at that Dutch side, if you ever get the chance, have a look at that Dutch side. It was incredible. It was a phenomenal Dutch side.
It's weird you say that, Stephen, because I've actually got I was looking into it to make sure you played in that game before I asked you a question. The Dutch side, Van der Sar, Stam, De Boer, Van Bronckhorst, Seedorf, Koku, David, Wesley Sneijder, Patrick Kluivert, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Mark Overmars.
They weren't bad. Yeah.
Not too bad, aye. And that was the team at Hampden. Aye.
That was the team at Hampden, and to get a win that day was incredible. But unfortunately, the real Dutch turned up in the second leg, and it was a really sore night for us all. Probably one of the most difficult nights in my footballing career. But listen, going on to talk a little bit about the Euros, I would have loved to experience that myself, and for our players to go there, it was a wonderful achievement. But I just felt that we didn't show the true Scotland over there.
Do you know?
I really like the current group of players. I really do. There seems to be a great camaraderie about them. They seem to, be very focused, very proud to play for their country, very humble in the way they speak. I like a lot about them, but I just felt that they didn't turn up at the Euros. They didn't show the best version of themselves. And I was really disappointed for them, because I think they'd earned the right to play on the big stage.
Tell me this, Stephen, to what did you attribute that? Did you attribute that to the fact that for whatever reason they were tired and they just malfunctioned in the big stage? Or there's another view, which is one that I would probably share, is that I felt we were a little bit too cautious in terms of how the players were set up, how the team was set up. I think the handbrake was on.
Particularly hungry, Keith. The hungry game.
And I just felt we could have got far more out of that group of players had we allowed them to go out there and express themselves a little bit more. I dare to say it in front of a man like yourself. It almost felt to me, Elvis, as if we were overcoached. Too much information.
I didn't see that, Keith. I thought we choked a little bit as individuals. I really did. I thought we didn't give the best version of ourselves, and we've got a lot of great players out there. But I think there was a feeling, there was an expectation even around the camp. A lot of the time when Scotland do enter into these big games or these competitions, there's not that same expectation as I felt going into Germany. And I just felt we didn't handle that as a group. But I also will say this, that's part of the journey of a team. Part of the journey of a team is to fail and disappoint and then come back stronger and learn from that. So it's normal in the journey. I think they've made great progress under Steve. We've had the disappointment of the Euros, but I think that experience and that stage will make us stronger. I really do. And, I think there were some really good signs in a couple of our most recent performances. I know they resulted in defeats, but I think our performances were really strong. And sometimes when you're looking at the development of a group, you have to look beneath the result. You have to look at that. Or you have to look at that performance. And I thought the last two performances have been really high level. And I think there's a great deal that Steve can take from them.
But do you not think, Elvis, that Steve has looked at it and he was conscious? And I think he was a bit stung, because who likes getting criticised? I think he was a bit stung after the Euros that he was copping a lot of the blame for being a little bit overly cautious. And it does seem, and he has said as much, and so has John Carver, there was an emphasis made after the Euros of, right, okay, we accept we need to tweak this, we need to try and be a little bit more forward thinking, a wee bit more aggressive. And that's what I think you've seen in the last two games. And it goes far to say, obviously, we played like the Euros in the aggressive front foot fashion that we have the last two, nobody would have got a hard time. They'd have been congratulated for their efforts.
No, I understand that, Keith, but I wasn't privy to the conversations within camp. I'm not sitting on the fence here. I just know in football, we're quick to make judgments when we don't know the full facts, and I wasn't privy to that. Now, if Steve's come out and said that, then we have to understand that. But he's also made a decision in bringing in Alan Irvine, somebody that I know quite well. I've spent a number of afternoons having coffee with, and quizzing him about his thoughts on the game and his great experiences of the game. And he's a wealth of knowledge, and I think he's a great acquisition to the group. I think he'll help in a number of ways. Hugely experienced coach, and he might give them that attacking news that they're looking for. So I think a very smart step from Steve again. So fingers crossed that we continue to move forward in the manner that I think we have shown in the last couple of games.
We had the story online today, though, Keith, on Record Sport Online, that most Scotland fans aren't going to get to see if we put in similar performances because the games aren't on the telly, which just seems obscene in this day and age to me.
Crazy. That is crazy. But I mean, I think that was a similar scenario before the last couple of games against Poland and Portugal when they were snapped up kind of right at the death. I think ITV came in. So you're hoping that something similar will happen this time round. The broadcasters just sitting there kind of playing a game of poker, seeing what price they can pick it up for. You would like to think, because these are this is the top league of the Nations League, so they should be showing our games. It's the England games we can do with, that pot beer, whatever they're in. Rubbish.
By the way, this is going to stick in my head, so I'll get it out. It's a pointless anecdote, but just so you sleep better tonight, Stephen, going back to that Dutch playoff for Euro 2004, I always remember so clearly in my mind, the draw for the playoff was on the BBC. And what they actually did was at UEFA, they did a practice draw first. And in the practice draw, do you remember who we got? Or do you know who we got?
No.
Latvia. No. Latvia. And then in the actual draw, we got the Netherlands, one of the best teams in the world. And it just shows, saying about Betty Vokes, if we'd got Latvia, you never know how you'd be remembered. But anyways, sorry, I'm digressing. I've got, honestly, a plethora of questions for you. Keith, is it okay if I move on to domestic matters? Is that all right?
Yeah, well, that's one big reason. Yeah, well, I think before we leave the Scotland thing, I think it's worth saying, can you believe that your old mate Craig Gordon's just about to pick up cap number 76 and 77?
Great point,
is there no end to this guy?
It's amazing. He's 42, I believe it, in December of this year, and he just continues to go and defy what everybody thinks, and it's real interesting. I remember speaking about Craig Gordon some time ago. I'm not sure if it was with you, Keith, exactly, but it might have been. And I went on to say that I was extremely privileged to have played with a number of really top-level goalkeepers, the likes of Craig and, of course, Andy Gorham, with the great Andy Gorham, and several others, and then I went on to say that, but in my opinion, Craig was probably the best that I'd played with. Of course, John Brown heard this, Bomber, and Bomber said that I was speaking out a hole in my backside. That there was only one Andy Gorham.
I tell you something, Elvis, as you and I both know, it's not a good idea to wind Bomber up, getting the wrong side.
No, it's not. It's not. I used to clean his boots too.
He is amazing, though, Craig Gordon. He was, in my opinion, in his prime, he was genuinely a world-class goalie. and I know I think he'll be pushing 43 by the time the World Cup comes around. But I said on the Hotline Live the other night, Stephen, I would still have him as Scotland's number one. I still think he's not only a great goalie still, but his experience and everything that he brings to a squad and to a team, I think it's invaluable.
I would agree, but even if he wasn't the number one, even as a number two, I think he brings a wealth of experience and know-how to the squad. And I think, especially in tournament football, I think that's pivotal, that you have that stabiliser, that support mechanism there, and somebody that's absolutely always ready to step in. So he's still certainly got a major role to play.
And let's not forget, Dino Zoff actually won the World Cup at 41, wasn't he?
Aye, good point, aye.
And everybody's lasting longer these days. It's just stages set.
I agree.
Of course you do. You and me both, old timers.
Let me move on then to some of the questions we've had sent in throughout the day for you, Stephen. There's a couple live that have come in that I just want to address to get off my chest here, Keith. Mo, watching live on YouTube, says, a plethora, please get Daniel a thesaurus, and misspells Daniel. So I think I've come out on top in that one.
Well, you're technically also right, so...
Aye, I know. Thank you, Keith. Domestically, we've obviously had several questions, Stephen, about Hearts. Basically, this one, I think Stephen Bissett sent in on Facebook, simply asked, what do you make of the current goings on at Hearts? Do you think Stephen Naismith perhaps deserved a little bit more time?
Well, look, again, I don't know the inner goings on, but I'm certainly a person within football that thinks that managers need time. You know, I think that it's an important and essential part of success, time and stability. And I think often when you give a manager a contract, it shows that you have belief in the way he works. I think you can tell from early on whether you've got the right manager or not. And once you've got the right manager, as in it looks like Hearts believed they did have the right manager, because giving him a new contract at the start of this season would indicate that, then I think you have to give him time. I understand the pressures that go with Hearts. I understand the demands to win games of football, but I also know that part of the journey, generally in success, is going through these periods and staying tight and true. And I was disappointed for Stephen. You know, the other thing is as well, and I don't know how Hearts operate, how they evaluate performances. I think it's a key ingredient in when you dismiss a manager, because I think if you work in certain ways where you evaluate performances not based solely on results, then you can plot the improvements in the team or decline in the team through a longer period of time, and you can often stop the rot before it actually happens. And I think that I don't know how Hearts evaluate performances. I don't know how they come to the conclusion of getting rid of a manager. Only they could answer that. But I think it's very important that you have a process in doing that, and the process cannot be based around emotion. I think that's a key factor.
Are we talking about science then? Are we talking about crunching the numbers here, Stephen? Because this is obviously something I want to speak to you about.
Yeah, yeah, but having a clear... Yeah, but a game model, shall I say, Keith, a game model in which you can assess your performances on a consistent basis. And that game model obviously is built around the style of play of your manager. And I think that that's key. And then you are constantly evaluating performance from week to week. And obviously, when you have signs of decline in certain areas, you can address them. You can support your manager in those areas. You can look into those areas of how we can improve. And I think that that's key, that it then doesn't creep up on you suddenly. So you're always trying to improve in areas, you know, that you need to improve in around the game model. And
so
I think that's
a more scientific approach is what you're saying, because obviously you're at a club just now in Brentford. Well, it's all about the algorithms and
but it's an
analytics
approach as well. It's an approach where you're not using the data or the game model to beat the manager over the head with. You're using it to support them and help them and make things better. And I think that that's really important. You know, this weekend down in England, you know, there's a few clubs where I think that people were expecting managers to lose their job, and they haven't. And I'm really pleased. I'm delighted with that, because I think that's an important factor, that part of the journey of a football manager and part of his development is actually to manage through difficult periods.
Yeah.
And he's got to be given the chance to do that. Now, eventually there comes a time where everybody has to accept that it's run its journey. But I think it's really important that, firstly, you know what you're assessing, you know what you're evaluating, and if you've got the right man there, then you give him time. I think it's key, because I think in success, stability is one of the most important factors. I really do.
Is this some of the stuff that you've learned from your time at Brentford? Because we know that they are really modern in the way that they go about driving the club and looking for these minor gains and all that. And there is a lot of supercomputers and analytics involved. Have you really enjoyed that side of it? Has it opened your eyes to stuff? What are we, a dinosaur like me? What am I missing with all this stuff?
You're not a dinosaur, Keith. Far from it. You know.
Trust Stephen, he is. Trust me.
It's just another layer onto it, and it's a way where I think that a more balanced view and a better way to evaluate performance and clear strategies within your club, and all of these things are extremely important. You know, because the appointment for a manager and having the right manager is obviously essential. But the support mechanisms, the expertise, the leadership, the culture within your club are equally as important. We've got an outstanding manager, I must say this, at Brentford. Truly outstanding. He really is an outstanding manager.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a lot of great things and a lot of great support around him. And he would openly say that. And I think that that's essential for a manager, having the expertise around you, the leadership around you, the strategy around you, and also the support and allowing you to work in your way. So I think they're all key, you know, cultural aspects. They're all key in their club's success. Of course, the right manager is also key.
So that's what my next question is. Sorry, Daniel,
No.
While we're on this, the supercomputer will now, the laptop will be opened, a button will be pressed, and a name will come out, or a list of names which will probably contain the identity of the next Hearts manager. How do you feel about that process, given that there are others, Derek McInnes here on the doorstep, for example, but Hearts seem committed to this idea of using a more futuristic, modern approach, data-driven. One, your thoughts on that, and two, any predictions for whose name might be churned out in the end?
So the first thing I would say is, Keith, that Brighton as a football club over a period of time now have had incredible success.
It has been incredible.
They have, you know, not in terms of, in terms of the recruitment of head coaches, but also the recruitment of players.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I was a Hearts supporter, I'd obviously be excited about that fact. But as I've just said there, it's essential that there isn't this increased expectation, because there's a number of things that are also important to the success of a football club, and it might not happen overnight. Now, I'm sure the algorithms and the data will identify the style of manager that they want, but that will only be one layer of the process. They will also, I'm sure, do a lot of checks, personality checks on the candidates. They will also interview the candidates. So there's a number of layers to the process. I'm sure of that. I don't know for certain, but I'm sure of that. But the one thing is, they must have confidence with the club that they're working alongside, because you know, the record is there for all to see. But my point being that they might get the right manager, but it's also essential that other areas of the club grow and support this manager for it to be a success. And the important thing for me is that I do see signs of that. I see recently them making an appointment of a performance director in Graham Jones, who has an extremely good reputation in that field. And that's another important step forward in the development of Hearts as a football club. So, you know, I'm seeing good signs moving forward. They obviously are putting certain things in place, and this is the new way that they're going to go. But the important thing for the Hearts fans is, and I know it's difficult to say this to supporters, but they need to give this time. You know, they can't expect this new way of recruiting a manager. He comes in and everything's okay. That's not going to happen. You know, there's a number of things to improve on the recruitment, other areas of the club. They'll all need to grow along with the manager. So when they get him in place, they need to show patience with him.
What if they drill down into the data and the name it chips up is Steven Pressley? You were almost there once, weren't you? You came close to that job, Elvis.
Funny you say that, Keith, because Mo on YouTube says, just put Elvis in the hot seat and bin the laptop. But he also follows it up with Daniel and Keith as the backroom staff. I mean, I don't want to say dream team, guys, but we're all thinking it.
Unfortunately, not at this time. You know, I had a great period there as a player and a real great memories. But as a head coach there at this moment, it's not for me at this present time.
And what about you? Is there still a pathway into management, Elvis? Because obviously you've got a massively important role with a massive amount of responsibility at Brentford just now. I mean, I think you spent your day this morning out in the training pitch with 6 or 7, 8 kids that they see as the golden eggs down there. You know, the next one's into the shop window, the next, you know, big money sales. And you've got the responsibility of mentoring these boys and improving them and working on their defects, etc. That's an enormously important job, but I'm guessing it's a really interesting one as well.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in the respect that the last 3 to 4 years have been great learning years for myself. You know, I work at present with 6 of what you would call our highest potential players, 4 of them in the first team, 2 of them the highest potential B team players, and I work closely with our first team with regards to those players. I've been very fortunate to work with Thomas Frank, see him at, you know, close quarters, see how he works, you know, the details he works towards, see many other areas of the club, how we work and how we use certain things, whether it's analysis, whether it's data, whether it's all of those factors. I've been very fortunate to be privy to all that information, and it's allowed me to grow and improve. But also, I was saying to you off camera that this year I'm on my university course. I'm doing a master's in strategic leadership. I've done a previous university diploma in football management also. So I'm always looking to improve and grow. It's part of the journey. But I
Who would have thought it, Elvis, eh? The young you.
I know.
Would you ever have seen yourself going for a master's?
No, it's great. I'm really enjoying it. It's really challenging for me. But, you know, I don't know what the future holds. This next year, like I've said, I would like to complete that. There's a number of thoughts. I often think about going back in and again as a head coach, but I also am quite intrigued by, you know, the sporting directorship. So there's a number of thoughts, but I'm very open just now in my mind. I'm not chasing anything at present because I'm very happy within my job. And my daughter's in her last year at school. I've got this year with the university course. So, you know, I'm not, as I've said, chasing anything at present. To be perfectly honest, I'm good in myself just now. I'm enjoying my life, and it'll be interesting to see what the future holds.
And you've got the 10% sale on those 6-star kids at Brentford, so you wouldn't want to be leaving that job for a while.
If only. I told you a great story earlier, Keith. I did tell you a great story.
And I'm conscious of the time going by. We've kidnapped you, Stephen, but there's so many questions that I want to get through. If it's all right with you, Keith, I might go through a little quick fire round. If that's okay. Mark Barber here on Facebook saying, who does Elvis consider as the greatest player he played with and against throughout his career?
Oh my word!
I should have really prepped you for that before the show.
You should have. You should have.
We'll tell you what. Have a think about that, and I'll hit you with this one as well. I know Stephen is coached in Cyprus, but does he regret never playing abroad? And did he ever have the chance to do so?
So he's wrong. I did
Is
play
he wrong?
abroad. Yeah, I played abroad. I played the last 6 months of my career. No, Denmark.
Why was
That's how I got. It was a club called FC Randers, who are still in the top flight. They were a developing club at the time, and I got the opportunity to go over there for 6 months. And the truth is, I really enjoyed my time there. And on the back of that, I often wished that I had the opportunity to play abroad and taken an opportunity to play abroad earlier in my career. The difference being, I think the opportunities now for young players are greater than they've ever been. For Scottish players to play abroad was highly unusual during my time, but now it's become far more common. It's become far more common for the British player to play abroad. Opportunities are there. Sorry, Lincoln.
I look at Billy Gilmore and
absolutely
Scott McTominay. I'm so jealous. I mean, not
and even
our
own even our own Aaron Hickey, had an opportunity to go to Italy and did exceptionally well.
How is Alan Elvis? Just on that, while we've got you, what's the prognosis?
He's okay. He's obviously still quite a bit away. It's been a difficult period for him, and I'm really disappointed for him because, firstly, Scotland missed him greatly at the Euros. There's no doubt about that. And trust me on this, he's an exceptional young talent. He really is. We've got a great player on our hands that can play, in my opinion, at the very top level. So it's disappointing for him, and it's obviously disappointing for our club at present.
How about this one, Stephen? Given Stephen played for a Hearts team that split Celtic and Rangers, do you think Aberdeen have what it takes to repeat the feat this season?
Well, I hope so, because I think it's healthy for our game in Scotland. I really do. I think that at present, I think our league needs greater competition. Our teams are floundering in Europe at present. And there needs to be improvements in all areas of our game. One, in my opinion, in the development and opportunity of our younger players. But two, I think that we need a more competitive league. And the emergence of Aberdeen this season is great. We'd love to see a strong Hearts, a strong Hibernian, a strong Dundee United, because I think then we have a really good league. And I think our national team will benefit from that. So I think it's really exciting. I also think it's exciting for Hearts, that with the link with Brighton, hopefully again they can emerge. So we need that. And to be honest, do I think Aberdeen can? I think there's a chance, because I think at present Rangers have got some issues, and I don't mean on the pitch. I look off the pitch. They don't have a CEO. They don't have a director of football. They don't have an academy director at present. So there's things that need sorted there. So there is opportunity for Aberdeen this year. I bet you didn't know this, but I was an Aberdeen fan growing up.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Did you know that, Keith?
I did know it. Yep.
Aye.
Did you, Keith?
I did, because
and you went
to school up there, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I was born up there, and my father's family were up there, and of course it was the Sir Alec years, and you know how you hang on to the glory days. So it was. But down here, I quite often meet with Eric Black, who was a hero of mine, and I'd embarrass him. I actually embarrass him during my time with him. But it's quite surreal. I play golf with Eric Black, and then also with Gordon and Mark McGee. All three of them were like my boyhood heroes. So I'm kind of living the dream.
How about this one, taking you back to the glory days, as you mentioned, Stephen? I mentioned this to you before the show. about how Drew Perry here saying, does Stephen realise he's the answer to a brilliant trivia question? Only player to win the Scottish Cup for Celtic, Rangers and Hearts. And I was surprised that you do know that. But just to tack on at the end of that, when John McGlynn takes over at Hearts, would Stephen be keen in a Falkirk homecoming? And I think they're linked because you almost won your 4th Scottish Cup at Hearts as well, didn't you? I think it was the 2009 final against Rangers that you got to.
Yeah, I was actually... It was my last game as a professional player, although I didn't participate and I was solely on the bench. It was my last game as a professional player. I retired immediately after the cup final. But I really enjoyed my time as a player at Falkirk, and I really, really loved my time as a manager there. I was there nearly 3.5 years, and the one thing during my time there was I was very fortunate to work with some great people, Alex Smith being one of them. And I'd always say this to a young coach. It happened by chance, but I was very fortunate with it. As a young coach, I would always suggest that you go and get yourself a mentor. I think they're vital. You know, I know young coaches generally have big egos and don't believe they need that, but trust me, I think it's essential in your development. And I was very fortunate to have a Mr. Alex Smith working alongside me, who steered and guided me and helped me enormously.
And I need to hold you to this one, Stephen, about who's the best player you played with and against.
Oh,
you must have. You would have played against some absolute crackers.
Some of them were in that Dutch side, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. You know, the Van Nistelrooys, and of course we had that terrific result at Hampden when Henri played. So I was very fortunate to play against some really top players, but it's often, you know, not the top players that give you the hardest time. I always remember playing against Mick Hartford for Coventry during my time, down against the Wimbledon side, you know, the crazy gang. And oh my word, that was an experience. You know, he threw me. He threw me about like a young boy, and it was a real learning curve for me. You know, Mick's a real proper number 9. You probably don't get too many of them these days, but he had a habit of using his elbows, and it was a real lesson. It was a really difficult afternoon for me. So.
Oh, brilliant.
What about played with, Stephen? I mean, even at Celtic, I mean, would you have played alongside
I would probably say played with, you know, Brian Laudrup was an exceptional talent.
Yeah.
He was an exceptional talent, and he had the ability to go both ways, and he had the ability to go almost from 0 to 100 within a second. He was incredible that way. So he was a wonderful talent. But also, you know, when I even look back at who had a big influence on my career, who did I learn a lot from, and I was very fortunate also to play with Maurice Malpass, and Maurice was obviously a great player, and a great international player that ended up as a fullback playing centre back alongside myself, and for one so. When I say so small, not so small, but he was lacking in height. He had the incredible knack of using his body to great effect, which allowed him to win a lot of first contact headers. And it was part of my development with him. It was actually, Keith, you'll laugh, but one of the things that I grew to be able to do was use my body and fall down on the ball and get fouls. You know, I was particularly good at that, but it was.
And by the way,
I learned
a much underrated skill.
No, it wasn't much, but I learned a great deal of that from playing alongside Maurice Malpass, and the way he used his body and the way he manipulated situations. So I was really fortunate to play alongside him. So I was lucky in my career to really experience playing with some great players.
I'm going to throw a comparative Snyder at you, right? Because our news editor in here, Mark Smith, did say before he was leaving the office tonight, as Big Elvis say, how come he thumped the Celtic badge after he scored against the Hearts? So in the best Edinburgh accent that I could manage there, that's from Mark Smith to you.
Put on the spot.
Yeah, it is. It's obviously an exceptionally touchy subject, and it's been a contentious subject for some time. You know, I often I talked on your show the last time about this, Keith, about about becoming a character on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, going into game face, and when I finished my career, the reason I finished my career was that I'd lost the edge, and really my game was all about my edge, and playing that character, that leader, that captain, tried to intimidate, tried to create problems with on the field of play. And I said to you in my last interview that some of my behaviour, I certainly wasn't proud of my behaviour, but it was my character. It was what I became on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah,
I tried to do everything to win. And I tried to do everything to win a game of football. People must understand that the Steven Pressley on a Saturday afternoon wasn't the Steven Pressley away from football. But often in football, that perception of what you are on a Saturday is what people believe you're like. And unfortunately, as a player, you have to live with that, and you carry that for your years. But it was just me. I tried to win. I didn't go back to appease the supporters. I didn't go back to appease anybody. I went back there with Celtic to win. Mm-hmm. And it was just my way. I did the same at Hearts. I remember going back with Hearts to Dundee United, where I had 3 very enjoyable years, that I had built a great rapport with the Dundee United support, and did something similar with them over an incident, and which helped get a player sent off, and the United fans turned on me on that. And it's not something I'm proud of, far from it. But it's what I was on a Saturday afternoon, and I don't like it when I look back on it. I really don't. But I think it was essential to my performance, and that's all I can say about that.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Elvis Smithy did say that he doesn't hold it against you.
That's okay, Keith. But as I said, it was just what I became, and like I said, it's not something that I was proud of.
On that Celtic one, Stephen, getting that chance just to play for Celtic in the Champions League, team winning trophies at that stage in your career, that must have been brilliant. I mean, that, I think you were 32, 33 when you joined Celtic. And as I say, to win playing at the Champions League for such a big club, that must have been a real thrill, I suppose, at the time.
Yeah, and one of the things I often say to the young players is that when you're young, I was very fortunate. I think at the age of 18, I won the Scottish Cup with Rangers at the time. And I also won, I think, 2 league medals at the time. Your information of 2 league medals is wrong.
Listen, I'll be writing a strongly worded letter to Wikipedia.
There was 3. So anyway, what I would say is that you think it's normal. You think it's going to happen throughout your career. And often that's not the case. So you have to enjoy, firstly, and appreciate that this might not happen again. So I had to wait a long time. Of course, I went on to win the Cup with Hearts, which was a great experience. But again, going to Celtic and getting the opportunity to win trophies was something that I was very fortunate to do. When I left Hearts, the interesting thing is, when I left Hearts, the intention was to go to England. I'd agreed in principle to go to Charlton.
Okay.
And only changed in my mind because my wife had just had her second child. And then Gordon chased me, and I chose to go there. But it was a great experience for myself. I was there for 2 years. I played alongside some terrific players. Also, I worked with Gordon, who I have the utmost respect for as a coach and a person. So it was a great time, and Celtic as a club treated me, brilliantly. It honestly was a great experience for myself, and it was one that I appreciated a lot more than when I was at Rangers, just because of my age and my experience in the game.
Did you care about the Celtic Rangers thing? Like when Celtic came in,
No.
did you think no?
No, because it's never been within my family. I wasn't a Celtic fan. I wasn't a Rangers fan. As I said to you before, I was an Aberdeen fan. My family, have some great values around them, and I was brought up in a very loving family that I wasn't exposed to sectarianism. So these things never affected me. It was only about playing football.
Mm-hmm. Keith, I'm officially out of questions. There's more coming in, and I could ask all night, but I'm conscious we've kidnapped Stephen for most of his evening now.
We've overstayed our welcome, Stephen. Sorry for that. I think it's just important that we emphasise again that Stephen is an Aberdeen fan.
Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We really appreciate it. And all the best at Brentford. And I mean, we hope perhaps before the season's out, we could maybe twist your arm and get you back on the Hotline Live at some point.
That'd be a pleasure, yes.
Brilliant, big man. Good to see you.
Thanks a lot, chaps. Thank you.
Cheers, Elvis.
And thanks for watching at home. Thank you.